I know everyone and their mother has already made a video about Yanderedev, but I figured it's in a similar vein to what I usually commentate on, so I'm just gonna get right into this. I am by no stretch of the term a computer person, so I'll not be going over the code of the game, more so his handling of his development, the situation, and generally just the whole social aspect of everything. Recently, there's been a bit of a kick-up regarding drama around him, so I figured now's a good time to finally hop on the topic. So this is a situation that spans several years already, and I must admit, I actually used to be a big fan of Yanderedev. I still think the concept and idea is interesting, although I'm unsure if it's my fond memories of playing or discussing with friends or what, but I do actually wish to see the game reach its full development. However, I highly doubt that will actually happen, seeing as we've gone through global pandemics, worldwide protests, a whole-ass PlayStation drop, multiple World War III scares, and a brief footnote of murder hornets and Ebola before the first major feature has even been put in the game. Actually disgraceful. It'll just be best for me to wait until somebody does Yandev's job for him. As for morals, Yanderedev has proven multiple times to be nasty, full of himself, and controlling, and recently there's been a new competitor to Yandere Simulator, a game created by the user by the name of Dr. Apis, I'm sorry if I mispronounced that, who has dropped a trailer for a game called Lovesick. This game, just by looking at the trailer, is everything Yandere Sim should have been, but made in like 2 weeks. This absolute legend, a coded a game that looks better, performs better, and just generally is better than the game that was in development for 6 years. I still find the concept of Yan Sim super interesting and fun, so you bet your bottom buck I am going to support this guy in every way I can. Please drop him a follow, he deserves all your support. But anyways, links will be in the description, and recently, Yanderedev has been very adamant about getting Apis to stop his development because it'll hurt his game, whatever. I mean, that's kind of the point, dumbass, but he's been super manipulative, even to the point of threatening to take his own life, which I'll get into now. Yanderedev acts like he's 13, which is a bit of an issue considering he's 32 and has a fan base of mostly kids. Like, seriously, look at the way this dude acts. I'm fucking weeping. This is absolutely foul. Anyways, here's some choice messages from him and his Discord. Here he is threatening the lead developer of Lovesick with ending his own life because he couldn't do in 6 years what this guy did in 2 weeks. Here's him just refusing to take care of himself because the game he never spends time on needs more time, apparently. Here's one of his mods falsifying DMs from Apis. Here's an example of how young his fans are, because seriously, who unironically uses the word baka in an English conversation? The main thing I want to talk about here is him threatening his own life in the DMs of the guy who literally just wants to make a game, because these are some of the most manipulative messages I've literally ever seen, and this is just aimed at a dude who's doing nothing wrong. Yanderedev feels so threatened by the mere existence of this guy's game that he has to resort to literally the lowest of the low because he knows this guy will run him out of business. Yanderedev hasn't had a solid competitor for a good 6 years, but this guy, you know, he's coming around and getting shit done. Alex knows that he's a competitor, and he knows that with the amount of controversy he's been through, he's simply done for if this Lovesick thing continues development, which is why he slithered into the DMs and left this message. The actual drama started a while ago, but I don't feel like talking about that. If you are aware that your project is having so many destructive consequences on another person's life, how can you possibly continue? Don't you see how harmful and damaging this is for me? If the cost of Yandere Simulator was ending a person's life, I'd cancel development. Are you actually kidding me? Destructive consequences? I don't think it's anyone's fault but your own that your only source of income comes from Yandere Sim, or that you don't have a real job as far as I know, and you also don't take the development of your own game seriously, or that your fan base has been so starved for content that they're actually willing to go over to this guy, because let me tell you, if your game is so slow in development that there's an actual market for a competitor, you've already lost as a dev. Let's say I'm making a game. I'm a solo team, but I actually take the development of my game seriously. I provide consistent updates to my audience, all of which are main features that I promised them when I first launched the idea. The main features of my game are being worked on, and I am transparent with how I spend my time. And then a competitor comes along with a game that's incredibly similar to mine, but since I've been a good daughter and I've been coding, they haven't completely surpassed my progress in 2 weeks. My fans will likely either ignore the game, support me solely, or support both of us at the same time, because they're loyal and I came up with the idea first and I am promising content and showing evidence that I am making good on said promise. Yanderedev's development has been a complete train wreck, and the reasons that his fans are leaving him is because of his atrocious handling of not only the progress of the game, but his community too. He's proven himself to be super nasty and super controlling in the past, and has a horrible tendency to try and silence criticism. It's only natural for his fans to get fed up with that kind of crap and move on to a developer that not only has a better game, but is also a better person and probably gives two shits about his fan base. It's not his fault that you're completely financially dependent on a game that you hardly work on. You did this to yourself, Yanderedev. Also, did I mention that he spent his money on a love doll? Yeah, he did that. He even named it after a fictional underage character that he literally put in the game as an ideal girlfriend. Like, her name is even cringe as fuck. My waifu? Come on, man, at least have some creativity. And her description, kawaii mo dairy, I can't pronounce that, sworn to her heart to an independent game developer overseas, spends her time daydreaming about her loved one. I'm getting secondhand embarrassment just looking at this, Jesus Christ. Not to mention, he's again 32 and she's a high school student, so likely underage. Like, just look at this. I am in love with the quote-unquote anime look. Outrageous outfits and impossible hair. I have no interest in blondes or brunettes. I want rainbow-colored hair. I have no interest in jackets or jeans. I want the lewdest clothing that money can buy. I want to date an anime girl, but anime isn't real, so I decided to make it real. Here she is, my lovely doll. I've decided to name her my waifu. She's dressed up as Momoka from Faku. I'm sorry, I don't know what that is, but I plan to dress up this doll as all of my favorite anime and game characters. When I'm in the mood to cuddle Yoko Ritona, I'll do it. When I want to kiss Samus Aran, I'll do it. When I want to become intimate with Rei Ayanami, by gosh, I'll do it. This doll isn't just going to have one identity, she's going to have as many as I want her to have. She'll dress up as all the anime girls I have a crush on. When you have a crush on an anime girl, she is called a waifu. This girl will be all of my waifus, that is why I've decided to name her my waifu. Have a closer look. Notice all the anime girls are just ones that Yanderedev has said to have crushes on in the past. That's kinda weird. I don't know, I genuinely don't have a problem with people having crushes on anime characters. That's not the problem here. The problem here is how it's acting, because holy shit, this is appalling. This is the kind of stuff I'd expect from neckbeards on 4chan. Wait a minute. Never mind. That's him. The point is, this guy is spending his money on a full-body love doll that he dresses up as his waifus, instead of coding a game that has been in development for 6 years, and the main feature hasn't even been implemented yet. Oh wait, I haven't even gone to the part where Yanderedev says that pedophilia is a sexual orientation, and that he would let a 14-year-old have sex with a grown adult if they'd passed a test. Silly me, let's get into that train wreck of a blog post now before I fucking lose it. Okay, so here is this monster of a blog post Yanderedev posted, and since I'm such a good host, I'm going to respond to some of his points here, as well as his attempts to belittle someone who thinks that he shouldn't be sexualizing high school girls. First section, let's go. On January 22nd, an individual contacted me to share her criticism of Yandere Simulator. She seemed to believe that Yandere Simulator contains depictions of underage characters in quote-unquote sexual situations. There are no sexual situations in Yandere Simulator. There are characters who make vague statements which imply that they are sexually active outside of school, but there are no characters who engage in sexual activity anywhere where the player can see them. This individual, who I will refer to as N, expressed her belief that Twitch chose to ban broadcasts of Yandere Simulator because it contains quote-unquote sexualized underage characters. If you've been keeping up with Yandere Simulator, you should be aware that I've been searching for a firm, solid, concrete reason why Twitch chose to ban Yandere Simulator from its service. Banning the game because of quote-unquote underage characters in quote-unquote sexual situations would be absurd for 2 reasons. First of all, there are no sexual situations visible anywhere in the game. Second of all, age of consent is different everywhere in the world. In some countries it's as high as 20, and others it's as low as 9. I believe that it would be ridiculous to ban Yandere Simulator because of an arbitrary number that changes depending on what country you're in. I pointed this out, and N responded by accusing me of being a pedophile. No sexual situations in Yandere Sim? Are you actually serious? The main currency in the game is panty shots, and you're saying there's no sexual situations. You do realize that taking upskirt photos and selling them is extremely lewd and lascivious behavior. That's just ridiculous. And there's also the part about age of consent in different countries. Like, are you actually kidding me? I'm losing it. He mentioned that some countries have it as low as 9, and then calls it an arbitrary number. Just because it's quote-unquote legal in some countries, it doesn't mean you get to fuck 9-year-olds. It just baffles me how this guy is trying to claim he's not a pedo, and then uses this as an argument. You realize the age of consent matters. It's there to protect children against mental trauma, right? And while some people still can't be emotionally mature enough at that age, it is still the age that is the most widely accepted. There's arguments to be had around that, but for the most part, 18 is legal, and nothing below that should be considered legal, especially not fucking single-digit ages. Are you nuts? The age of consent is not an arbitrary number. It's something specifically put in place to protect kids against trauma. Just because places exist where that age is lower doesn't make it right. I've responded to this argument several times before, but it's appalling to me that a grown man would try and use this. This is where I should have just rolled my eyes and proceeded to ignore all future communication from this obnoxious individual. Instead, I made the mistake of responding to them. I attempted to explain that it's pointless to assign an age to a fictional fictional character because fictional characters can be clones, vampires, robots, or any other type of character whose age doesn't reflect their physical appearance. I pointed out that when it comes to fictional characters, ages are completely arbitrary, and interpreted this as evidence that I'm a pedophile. Actually, throughout an entire conversation, she interpreted literally every statement I made as evidence that I'm a pedophile. I could say the sky is blue and she would hear the words, I touch children. At this point in time, I asked her why she demonized pedophiles. A person does not choose their sexual orientation. Sexual preference is not a choice. No person chooses to become a pedophile, it's involuntary. Pedophilia is a defect, an illness, a disorder. A pedophile has something broken inside of them, and as of now, there is no cure. A pedophile lives with a curse. I look upon pedophiles with a deep degree of pity, but not hate. I cannot bring myself to hate someone who do not deliberately choose to be the way they are. Now, child molesters and child rapists, those are a completely different story. It's unforgivable to deliberately violate another human being, especially someone who is too young to defend themselves or even comprehend what you're doing to them. I said it before and I'll say it again, if a child molester or a child rapist is given the death penalty, I would gladly serve as their executioner. I love always trying so hard to belittle this person for their completely rational views, and then it's just making a complete fool of himself. The ages of fictional characters, while it's not as impactful as real-world ages, are still important. Lollies, for example. I don't care if she's a 10,000-year-old dragon genie robot, if she looks like a kid and you're attracted to her, you're attracted to the image of a child. If it's acceptable on the internet to be attracted to cartoon kids, it's going to lead these degenerates to feel like it's acceptable to find real children attractive because, hey, they're just lollies. I mean, obviously not everyone's like this, but there are some people that are just that depraved. Also, are you seriously kidding me? Why do they demonize pedophiles? Maybe it's because they're sick people who are a danger to society. Pedophiles are not a sexual orientation, it's a mental fucking illness. And believe it or not, therapy can help with pedophilia. It can stem from past trauma, and that can be worked through with the help of a professional. While he is right that being a pedo is something that is abnormal and a disorder, the fact that he treats it like being gay is fucking appalling. Gay people don't need fixing because their lifestyle doesn't involve victims. A healthy relationship between two people of the same sex is not the same as an adult taking advantage of a naive and experienced child. It's good that he hates people who act on their urges, but the hatred of pedophiles is something that you need to incorporate too, because while you can feel pity, you should not treat people with a disorder that has the possibility to hurt others like they're some kind of poor little soul. Until a pedo gets help and realizes their problems, they're dangerous and should be treated as such. Fortunately, Anne did not comprehend the nuance of my statements. She insisted that all sexual contact between minors and adults is inherently abusive. She was absolutely obsessed with the idea of exposing me as an evil, demonic pedophile. She demanded that I tell her what I think the age of consent should be. This should have been my cue that Anne completely lacked even the slightest degree of reading comprehension skill, because I had just explained that someone who passes the age of consent is not magically quote-unquote ready for sex just because they had a certain amount of birthdays. I pointed out that there are many people under the age of 18 who have had sexual experiences without being traumatized. I pointed out that some people aren't ready for sex even after the age of 18. All human beings are different from one another, thus one age of consent will not work for all humans. I attempted to propose the idea of finding another way to determine whether or not someone's ready for sex, such as passing a test that grants a sex license. Regrettably, these concepts were simply too complex for poor Anne to grasp. Intent on forcing me to answer a question that would allow her to brand me as a pedophile, she demanded to know if I would permit a 14-year-old to have sex with a grown man if the 14-year-old had passed the sex license test that I had proposed. Well, obviously, if there's a test that objectively proves that a person is ready for sex and a person passes that test, then that person is objectively ready for sex. This is simple logic, but N lacked the mental capacity to figure that out. Yanderedev, what the fuck is this? A sex test? Literally no such thing can exist. What the fuck would the questions be? I don't think he understands that every person's experience with sex is wildly different. He was almost there with the 18-year-olds not always being mentally mature, but how do you think that applies to children who are not even 18 yet? Children with no life experience. There's literally no way a child whose brain has not fully formed yet can wholly understand the mental experience of having sex, much less with someone who has had that development. There's literally no way to find out about how you react to sex with another person until you try it, and there's no reason whatsoever to put a child with that kind of thing, because guess what? People of that age who have gone through that kind of thing are traumatized. Their mental state is not the same as it was before the experience, and it may never be the same again. You say that you're against child molesters, yet you openly say that if a 14-year-old passes some kind of sex test, then it's okay for them to have those kinds of relationships with grown-ass adults. Get the fuck out of here, please. At this point in time, Ed made the following comment. All mental health professionals I've seen have agreed that 14 is too young. I asked N to clarify the statement. She admitted that when she was 14, she had been molested by an adult. At once, everything finally made sense. All the puzzle pieces fell into place. I understood everything perfectly. I wasn't speaking to an obnoxious jerk. I wasn't speaking to someone who lacked reading comprehension ability. I wasn't speaking to someone who was remarkably unintelligent. I was speaking to someone who was hurting. N had gone through a horrible experience that no person should ever have to endure, and desired justice for what had been done to her. To her, the only way to strike back would be to pick a target, me, and bring shame and harm upon this person with accusations of pedophilia and support for child abuse. The act of attacking or exposing a predator would bring her catharsis and relief. Her desire to attack and expose a pedophile had grown so strong that it morphed into an obsession that caused her to abandon all semblance of logic or rational thought. No matter how much I condemned child abuse, she would remain completely, totally, utterly convinced that I was a baby-raping monster. She had brainwashed herself to believe that I was a pedophile, and absolutely nothing I could say could make her think otherwise. Big reveal, N, the person Yanderedev has been talking about this entire time, was a survivor of abuse herself, and Yanderedev is just constantly insulting her in every sense of the word throughout this entire post. He's insulted her intelligence, her comprehensive thinking skills, her motives, literally everything. Even after he found out that she was a victim of the very thing he seems to be supporting, he still chose to write her as some stupid illiterate kid who doesn't know what she's talking about. He completely assumes her intentions here and tries to make her seem like some kind of crazy, brainwashed person who doesn't know what she's doing. Yanderedev, in writing this post, you have proved that you were exactly the kind of disgusting person that N thought you were. You may not have touched kids, but you excuse the people who have those urges, and you try to create situations in which underage people can have those kinds of experiences. You do realize what you just did, right? You took someone who had genuinely experienced trauma, genuinely had their childhood ruined, and you tried to explain to them why pedophilia isn't inherently bad. In fact, 14-year-olds can have sex if they're quote-unquote ready, and then you proceed to blast her to your millions of fans, writing her off as delusional or just crazy, all while insulting her because she refuses to agree that pedophilia isn't something to be looked down upon, or that 14-year-olds can possibly have sex. Notice how he didn't show any of the DM conversations? It's likely because N was being extremely rational and not at all crazy like he was painting her out to be. This was 4 years ago and he still has supporters. His career should have ended right at the moment he posted this blog, but I guess it just didn't happen. There are some things people have done that can be forgiven, like edgy jokes or dark humor that hasn't aged well, but this isn't it. This is Yanderedev, a grown man, making someone who genuinely has been through a massively traumatic experience out to be some sort of stupid, brainwashed, crazy person who only wants to paint him as a pedo. It's absurd how this guy managed to keep his career after this, but I'm just glad people are finally dropping his ass, because there's no way this man should have a presence online, much less the fandom of young kids that he has. Anyways, in conclusion, Yanderedev is a horrible, scummy person and a shitty developer. I didn't even scratch the surface of how awful he is because I don't want this video to be a fucking movie. He's generally just a terrible person and you shouldn't support him. Lovesick is shaping up to be a much better game with a much better developer, generally just around the same premise, and I wholeheartedly ask you to support Lovesick's dev instead of Alex. That's all for today's video. I hope you enjoyed. If you liked it, be sure to comment down below and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye. Thank you.